answered. Now then, we got to talk about one that's a little more opinion-orientated. Definitely not really any stats in here, and it's about the player opt-ins and opt-outs. A lot of these seniors and juniors had no idea we were going to have a season. It was pretty much like just written off the table, like this fall isn't going to occur. We're not going to get football being played in college, at least. And a lot of these guys have gone on to declare for the combine and the draft. They've picked up agents, and now the big question is how many of these guys are going to come back, and if they're even going to be allowed to come back. Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. Some of these guys opted out all the way back like in early August when there wasn't looking like a season at all, and now here we are a few months later, and the season's coming up in less than a month, or just about 1 month exactly, I think, from today. And it's a tough question. I mean, previously, the NCAA has always been a very big strict stickler for rules and eligibility, but I mean, recently with this, they've actually kind of laid back a bit, especially with Rashawn Bateman, who is a Minnesota wide receiver. He actually opted out in August, and he signed an agent. He was actually being given money for training and all his stuff for preparing for the draft. And then he decided after the Big Ten started a season, he's like, I want to come back and play. So he petitioned to the NCAA. He sent them a letter or something, and they got back to him and said, yeah, sure, you've got another year of eligibility, you can play. So I think COVID has really affected the NCAA's stickler for rules, kind of, and they're kind of lessening up on these eligibility concerns because of so many unknowns with COVID and everything.
Yeah, and I mean there was precedent even before him as well with Michael Turk when he declared himself for the 2020 draft as a sophomore, like way back before I think even COVID started coming about. Interesting fact, the man dropped 25 on the bench press as a punter as a sophomore. So congrats to you, Michael Turk. I will applaud you for that. Had an agent, went undrafted, and then was allowed to go back to ASU. All because he wasn't, NCAA just ruled that he wasn't allowed to go to the pro days. He wasn't allowed to get those private training sessions, all because of COVID. And I honestly think that that's all fair. The one thing that was up in the air for me was that if these guys had started receiving benefits or getting money, that was my big question mark about whether or not it'd be fair at that point to let them back in. But again, I suppose with, what was his name again?
Rashad Bateman, Minnesota wide receiver.
With the Minnesota receiver Rashad Bateman coming back after even getting money, I definitely think that I actually think that that's going to start pulling a lot more guys back who might have said, hey, you know what? I've gotten my pre-combine grade from my agent or some guys who were like scouting me or helping me out with training. I'm not really happy with that. You know, I've made some dough on the side. I wouldn't mind going back for another year of college, you know, getting that education, getting that extra year of playing on the field, maybe to develop outside of that like NFL eye. And I think those are the guys that absolutely should go. As well as them, freshmen and sophomores, if you guys have declared for the combine, I don't know what you're doing. Go back to college ball, please. Like that's 2 more years a lot of these grown men now have on you, and you're trying to compete with them. And I think it's just absolutely crazy. Sorry. And the ones who probably, they would have had to have been at the university for at least 3 years to declare. So it would be any of the ones who had redshirted as a freshman or sophomore, possibly a junior, and gotten those 3 years in. That would have worked out a lot better if I had known that beforehand. Shout outs to the team sitting behind the camera. The other point with all of that is I also don't see why you'd want to give up another year of scholarship if you're on it with that's free education, that's free training, that's free facilities. You have all of that going for you. And I mean, it's sad to say everyone's college career, everyone's football career eventually ends. Like that sun sets. I'm sure your high school coaches have said it over and over and over again. Mine sure did. Eventually your football career is over, and what you're going to have left over are the relationships you've built, the education received, and the skills, ethics, and morals you developed with your team. I don't know if you have the same opinion as me, Nathan, but that's just how I personally feel about taking the season off.
Yeah, it's similar. But before, with what we've been saying about players opting back in, before any of the Husky fans here in the chat get too excited thinking maybe Levi Onwuzurike or Joe Tryon will come back, Jimmy Lake at an earlier press conference said that neither one of the two players who opted out will be returning to the squad. So we won't be getting back those two stars on the defense. But in good news, we did keep Elijah Molden, who that's huge news with him being such a great defensive back for the Huskies. But yeah, getting to your point of them opting out when they have free education, I think it's a tough decision for these guys like Levi Onzarike and Joe Tryon. They had some great years. Joe Tryon had really one great year, and he's capitalizing on that. He's got great measurables. He's 6'5", and he's got good draft grades. So he's got to capitalize on that, I think. So I understand why he's leaving. He's trying to get the money. That's what it is. He wants the money. Same for Levi Onzarike. He wants the money. He's spent 3 years here at UW, I feel. He started the past 2. He had some great numbers. PFF loved him. Top 10 at defensive tackle and defensive end grades. So these guys, I mean, it's a tough decision for them. Do you keep the free education just in case your NFL career flops, or do you risk it? Do you go now when your name's hot on the trainers and the scouts and try and make that money?
Yeah, it's going to be a big question for all those guys, and they have not much longer to think about it and make decisions. I mean, I have a personal opinion too that I think for some of these guys who don't really have those immeasurables, those like intangible things where they have just like a high football IQ, the couple of months where they're strictly training for the combine or doing some like halvesy pro days, like it might actually be a detriment to their skill levels and their eventual combine grades. But that just about wraps it up for today's episode.